That's one of Andy Fleming's best tunes. Andy Fleming with Brother Trucker and his tune Downtown about basically about a homeless kid in Des Moines who ended up that way because his parents would not accept the fact that he was gay. Yeah, lots of struggling people out there, folks, including 1 out of every 7 Americans who are now on food stamps because of tough economic times and a variety of other challenges that we face in the society today. But do not cry any tears for those people if you are a Republican member of Congress. Apparently, they don't mind subsidies for farmers. They don't mind subsidies for corporations. They certainly don't mind subsidies for as a former Republican, Eisenhower said, the military-industrial complex. They don't mind those kinds of subsidies. What bugs them are subsidies for folks who eat for a living. And it's just shocking to me. Even the U.S. Senate is going the wrong direction on this. Even the U.S. Senate is cutting money for food stamps. But the cuts in the House are truly draconian. They're unacceptable. They're immoral. They need to be challenged. As we speak, this bill, the Farm Bill, of which the food stamp program, and again, food stamps, now called SNAP, or Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, that is being debated in the U.S. House. I mean, and I don't know where it's going to go from here, folks. We shall see what happens. Again, I hope common sense prevails. I'm not confident, but I've got a bunch of good people with me today on this program talking about it. Ron Yarnell in the studio. Ron, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Ed?
Good. And we've got a guy on the phone who does not have a lot of time to sit online because he is running Iowa's food banks. And so I'd like to just go right to Corey Birkenes and welcome him to the program. Hello, Corey. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, again, you're not very partisan. You probably don't. You probably have to be somewhat above the partisan fray in order to maintain your organizational and professional position. But
yep, that's correct.
That's correct. Yeah. So where are we at in terms of the your take on the food stamp program?
Sure. Well, we have outreach workers that work all across the state.
Actually, Corey, if you could hold for a second, I'm going to have to go to a quick break. We got a technical problem. I think we can fix it. I'll be right back, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Well, good morning. This is the 7th of June in the Lord's year 2010, and this is day one of webcast1live.com. We will begin with Max World Live with my special guest, Tom Coates. In just a minute, there's Tom. Wait, howdy. And we will be live for the very first time on Webcast One Live. Someday we're going to look back on this and say, gosh, remember that old day in history? Wonder where Walter Cronkite was. He must have been around hanging there too. But actually, it's the beginning of Webcast One Live. And thank you for listening. Thanks, Rob Spearman, and everybody who's put together this project together. And we're ready to go live now. So thanks for listening to MaxWorldLive.com.
can't tell you that it's going real well from time to time, but it is going.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
All right, welcome back. That's Mr. Baber's Neighbors. Apologies for the technical challenge. Fortunate to have not one, not two, but three technical wizards in the studio this afternoon, and we sorted it out rather quickly. So we're back, and things are looking great. We've got the phone lines are full, by the way. So for what that's worth, that's a good sign. I think people are concerned about food, as they ought to be. I think people are concerned about the poor. Apparently, maybe not in the U.S. Congress, but we'll talk about that. I do want to take a second to thank the Iowa chapter of the Sierra Club, also Iowa Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the Great March for Climate Action, three nonprofit organizations that help sponsor this program. Also, I want to thank Gateway Market and Cafe at 20th and Woodland for being the anchor sponsor of this program, and Tinker Heating and Cooling, Hawk Restaurant, and the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit, a few of our other business and organizational allies. Check out more about them on the Fallon Forum website and support them, support the businesses, the organizations, and the events that make this show possible. Ron Yarnell's in the studio, but we have Corey Birkenes on the phone with us. He's with the Iowa Food Banks, the Food Banks of Iowa. And I wanted to get Corey's take before we had the technical glitch as to how the congressional decision to axe $20 billion from the food stamp program might affect Iowans. Corey, welcome back.
Yes, thank you very much. Yep, I was saying we do have our outreach workers working all across the state and signing and educating people, and the $20 billion cut, that's just a drastic measure. There's 408,000 individuals on SNAP in Iowa, 190,000 households.
And then SNAP is the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, right?
Exactly,
Okay.
yep. The average household receives $259 per month, which enables them to receive the food and purchase food. And these cuts would decrease that household SNAP benefit by $90 over 30%.
That's a lot.
So
It's a 30% cut.
Yep,
I mean,
you can imagine. Yep.
Yeah, that's a big cut.
You can imagine, as if we drop our grocery expense, and they're just living on the bare minimum anyway,
Right.
and having to cut another 30%, it's just not going to happen. I mean, it's not going to work for us.
So I mean, Ron, you pay attention to politics. I don't. It seems like the Republicans in Congress are intent on not just alienating, constituency groups like gays and lesbians, like the growing Latino community, but it also seems they've got it out for the poor people of this country. I mean, that's my take on it.
This is news.
Well, I guess not news. Yeah.
Actually, the fact that it comes up tells you how both political parties, both Republicans and Democrats, are owned and operated by.
Well, no, but that's 1%. Not fair. The Democrats on this issue are doing
let me finish.
a better job. Sure.
Let me finish. Because you said yourself that there is some traction in the Senate to cut the benefit, and that's a Democratic a Democratic body. What disturbs me is beyond this cut, the basic demobilization, the depoliticization of the poor. Because you know what, if it's left to you and me and other nice guys to defend poor people and their rights, they really are kind of screwed.
Yeah, well, I mean, Corey, how much more traffic can the food banks of Iowa absorb as the federal government abdicates its responsibility to try to provide a safety net for the least among us? Sure.
Well, there's a simple answer. Food pantries and food banks can't absorb that extra. I mean, we're already the demand is so high and the supply is so low that any ability that we're able to do is being overrun by these cuts. So that's the importance. There's so much need out there, and by having the disconnect between us and the legislative process, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt everybody. And I mean, that's 13% of the state of Iowa, and 19.5% of the children in Iowa, they're food insecure, and that's an unbearable number. But yep.
Well, Corey, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us out of your busy schedule. Keep up the good work, and I really hope that help is on the way, because again, you can only do so much, and you're doing great work, and you've got a lot of community groups, churches, and others that have been a long time part of making the food banks possible, and it just would be tragic to see the workload get so impossible that you can't serve the people in need. So.
Well, awesome. Well, I appreciate your work on this and your speaking up. It does make a difference. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye.
Ron, back to what you were saying too about I mean, again, there are some. I know the cuts in the Senate are also disturbing, but they're small and compared to what the Republicans want to do in the House.
The fact that it even gets raised indicates the powerlessness of the poor, and also I'm wondering if it indicates the declining political fortunes of the upper Midwest, of places like Iowa. Because the thing about the SNAP program is that it has always been an ag subsidy. It has always been not just there to help people who are hungry, but it's there, it benefits retailers. It's an ag subsidy. And the fact that it's up for grabs just makes me wonder what kind of political shakeup we're looking at here.
What do you mean political shakeup?
There was a time where Republicans and Democrats could get together. I'm old enough to remember when Democrats and Republicans could get together on basic food security. And Democrats and Republicans worked together to cobble together some level of food security for people. Now I'm reading, for example, the articles today in the Des Moines Register, and my question is, what do the Republicans think now that, for example, if you reduce SNAP entitlement, that people who struggle with food security, that will motivate them to go out and fend for themselves more? I don't understand. I'd like an explanation.
That's why we should be grateful for the continued use of the green lawn. I mean, you look at all these corporate headquarters in suburbia; they have vast tracts of lawn in front of their building. I mean, if we could start to let that grass grow just another 3 or 4 inches, the poor can go out there and graze. Now, that would be a solution that would cut. Then you could justify cutting the food stamp program. You could find a way to save those corporations money on lawn maintenance, and the poor could get enough food directly from that plant source.
Ed, sometimes I just know you're Irish.
I hope you know that I'm sarcastic as well.
But your sarcasm is straight out of Ireland. It's straight out of Jonathan Swift.
Oh my gosh, that kind of hurts almost.
It may even touch base with the 1840s.
All right. Well, I like to have my roots back in the past, where lines of class were much clearer.
Well, here's the thing. The SNAP. I wish we had a more politically diverse audience, because then we could get the folks call in who would give us anecdotes like how they were standing on you remember these anecdotes, right? They were standing on the grocery line, and the person behind them had cuts of beef and had lobster and had all kinds of things that they can't afford, and the person looked to be a SNAP recipient. And we could just hear all these wonderful anecdotes, and then you break it down and you find out, for example, the average SNAP benefit is $135 a month.
I think it's only 122 here in Iowa.
Okay,
122 a month. And it's going to drop by 30% with this cut.
I don't know about you. Now, obviously, it's a supplement. It's not intended to be the whole thing, but as a supplement. Now, I don't know about you, but when I go to the grocery store, I hit $122 pretty fast.
Well, easy to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it basically boils down to $4 a day. I eat more than $4 a day halfway through breakfast. I don't know about anyone else.
Now, speaking of that, there are, again, this is why I'm at least impressed with some of the actions on behalf of congressional Democrats. They're trying to make the point about how tough it is to live on $4 a day. Some of them are actually going on a diet that restricts them to $4 a day in food.
Okay. Are they challenging the Republicans? Because I
don't know, but I've got. There was a great letter to the editor in this morning's paper by Max Nauer, and I'm delighted that Max is on the phone with us.
I would like them to challenge, for example, Chuck Grassley, who is getting $10,000 a year in ag subsidies.
Farm subsidies.
Right.
Yeah, how many food stamp recipients get $10,000? Right. Well,
and that's literally just to let the grass go. That's for conservation.
Well, and again, back to my point about how we can find that food supplement for the poor.
Yeah.
Grassley's front lawn. Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ed. Glad to be with
great
you.
letter to the editor this morning. It was a breath of fresh air. Thank you.
Well, it was the full letter was actually the letter to our Republican senator and 2 Republican congressmen, but they necessarily cut out the portion that addressed them directly. And as I cited the 26 Democratic congressmen and women who were taking the SNAP challenge, indicating that, okay, we have some very safe and secure people who are at the top of their profession, politics, taking a minor hit for a short period of time. That's not going to quite connect us with the reality of being poor,
right,
and then having your food taken away.
Sure. But now, to be clear, I had not heard about the congressional Democrats who were making this statement. And it's true. They're doing it. And for how long? And who are they? Do we know?
It's a week, and I do have a list. It's posted on Congresswoman Barbara Lee's website.
I would expect Barbara Lee would be among them. Good for her.
Yeah, she is. There are no Iowa congressmen right now who are involved, but there are a few in the Midwest, and I have the list in front of me. I'm not going to read it off to you.
I'm surprised it hasn't received more attention, but maybe I shouldn't be surprised, Ron. I mean, it just deals with the poor, and so why would the mainstream media want to pay too much attention to that?
Yeah, how many poor folks buy the Des Moines Register anymore?
Yeah.
Right. Well, it has received enough attention to get a snarky response from the aide of a Texas congressman who said that he could make do on less than that. And he gave his grocery list for a week and said it even gained 2 pounds. But
on less than $4 a day?
No, it was less than $4.50 a day.
$4.50 a day.
The national average.
Okay, gotcha.
Here in Iowa, according to the 2012 report, was $4.04 a day for a 30-day month.
Okay.
And that's just using 2012.
Right.
By the way, Wisconsin is the lowest among the 50 states at $116.50 a month. Iowa's a bump up from that at $121.20 a month. And Hawaii is the top state at $213.65 a month. Keep in mind that among our territories, Guam, not being a state, it rates higher than Hawaii.
Wow.
Yeah.
Max, again, I appreciate you taking the time to give us a call. And again, great letter to the editor. I'd be interested if you get any pushback or feedback that's either positive or negative. So,
well, we'll let you know.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hey, also joining us in the studio, State Representative Dan Kelly. I had not necessarily planned on talking about this issue today, but it came up in the news. It's happening right now in the U.S. Congress. And Dan has been a real champion here in Iowa on the food bank issue. The funding that was approved by the House and Senate was something that he and his colleague Art Stade helped make sure was in that final appropriations bill.
Right, and there were lots of other folks that helped with that too. But
Sure.
Art Stade and I offered an amendment that led to this.
What's your take on what's happening in Washington on that? That's gotta hurt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Very disappointing. Especially when we're starting to make progress here in Iowa. We do have $1 million appropriation before the governor.
And he still hasn't made up his mind.
We're waiting to see if he signs it or not. And it is part of a larger bill, so this would be a veto situation if he does not sign it. But we're very hopeful. You had Corey on the show earlier.
Sure.
Corey met with the governor just about a week and a half ago, and from what I understand, that was a good conversation. So we're very hopeful. Last year, the governor did veto a $500,000, $500,000 appropriation to the food banks.
But you think he's inclined to support it this time?
I'm trying to remain optimistic about it.
Can we get the governor to talk with Senator Grassley and with Congressman King and Latham about the importance of the SNAP program?
Well, somebody's got to.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can have Ron do it.
Yeah.
Ron, will you go talk to those people for us?
If you set it up.
If I set it up, yeah.
I'll
try.
Don't you have an in with people like King and Latham and folks Grassley and folks like that?
No.
You
not
don't
really.
I
No.
thought they were part of your circle.
I used to. I mean, I served with Steve King, and actually, we we get along
Well,
okay.
you know,
we found a couple issues, believe it or not, that we had in common. So
once again, what I want to know is basically the Republican rationale. Is it kind of a bootstrap kind of philosophy that SNAP is making people soft, making them lazy? They're living off of the fat of the land, they're living off high of the hog, and that's how come we need to cut it down. Is that the logic, or is it just that poor people in this country have no political oomph, so they're easy targets? You would not go to people like Chuck Grassley and say, we're taking away your farm subsidy. That would be dead on arrival.
Yeah. Well, it's fortunate that on this program where we try to present a range of opinions, that it's not just those of us who believe that maybe the poor deserve some consideration, deserve a safety net, but there are folks on the other side who articulate the opinion that probably Steve King and Tom Latham would embrace. Frank from Des Moines, welcome to the show. Frank, how are you?
Ed, Ron, Dan. Anytime Ron's on, I just love to call.
Well, and Ron, believe me, he looks forward to it.
Ron's one of my favorites. He's always half right.
That's more. It's a better batting average than I have, I presume.
If I'm only half right, that will get me to the major leagues. Right?
Well,
so Frank, come on, Frank, really, why should the poor not have some access to food?
Where you're right is the decline of the Midwest, but your fondness for the good old days when Republicans and Democrats worked together is when Democrats owned the aisle. See, back in the good old days when there was only about 38 senators, and we didn't have the House for 40 years, that was the good old days when the Republicans, Democrats worked together because we didn't have no choice. But I just ask you guys, when does a safety net, in your opinion, become a permanent entitlement?
Are we talking about the military-industrial complex, economic development for big corporations, or farm subsidies?
When can you ever pull back on a program? I don't care what the program is. I've heard Ron's theory. I believe Ron's theory that capitalism feeds on itself. Capitalism begets more capitalism. When can you ever pull back on these programs? Because the programs always feed on themselves and become larger.
Ron?
Frank, are there hungry people? Are there households in Iowa that are food insecure?
Absolutely.
Okay. What should we do about it? Should we just leave them to their own devices, let the free market take its course, figure that they'll get the picture sooner or later, and they'll become industrious people, and they'll feed themselves? What will happen, Frank?
Let me give you an example, Ron. Bill O'Reilly is heading up a whale of a program to get some wheelchairs, all-terrain wheelchairs, to any wounded warrior that needs one in this country. And he's went and he's got pictures signed by the 5 living presidents to give to the 8 highest bidders. You got people who's donating money, $100,000, that want to remain anonymous. This is how the poor and this is how the downtrodden are generally taken care of by the generosity of the country, not coercion of your wallet through the IRS.
Frank, private charity accounts for 6% of food provision for people who are food insecure. 6%.
But if you took less of people's taxes, they may feel more generous.
Okay, which branch of the armed forces do you want to dismantle?
I would like to see them all put under one branch, and not necessarily.
Well, good
have
luck
all.
with that.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that, Frank.
Well, sure, but I'm saying, if there's 25% waste in everything, I mean, there's been 50 million.
No, it varies. You can't paint the entire federal budget or even the state budget with one brush.
Okay,
There's more waste here, less waste
Frank,
there.
do you know how the breakfast program, which is often maligned by conservative folks, you know how the breakfast program came about?
No.
During World War II, when they were drafting people, they found that in rural areas, an incredibly high percentage of the young guys that they wanted to draft into the Army were malnourished. They suffered malnutrition. They were basically unfit for military duty. So they decide we can't go on like this. We have a war to fight. This is a threat to our national security. That is how the breakfast program came about.
Frank, I've got to let the Ron's history lesson be the final word on this. I've got to run to a break.
Quickly, I'm not against feeding people, and I don't want to see no one go malnourished in the country. So I'm not some cold-hearted person. It's the least offensive of the giveaway programs in the country. But I'm just saying, there's been 50 million new recipients here under Obama. I'm just saying, when do you ever pull back on any program? And
when poverty declines and the economy continues to get better. Frank, I got to run to a break. Thanks for calling.
For the time, Ed.
All right, appreciate you. You can stay on hold and listen to Dan Kelly impress you as much as Ron has.
Okay, sure.
All right, we're gonna go to a break here, folks. I want to thank Gateway Market and Cafe for sponsoring this segment of our show. Again, speaking of food, they're a fantastic grocery store located at 20th and Woodland in Des Moines. Also for breakfast, lunch, supper. Again, check out the entire list of business supporters for this program and support them, because if you believe in the alternative to talk radio on the FM and AM dial, this is it, folks. And thank those people who are putting their efforts behind it. Again, we're going to take a short break here. When we come back, Dan Kelly's going to stick around with us. We've got more to talk about with him. I'm very excited that Winona Howder with Food and Water Watch is in the studio with us. She's in Des Moines talking up her new book on food policy. Great timing with what's happening in Congress. We'll be back in just a minute.
Just like that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. The dawn of a new era begins. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm not the guy who cared about love. I'm not the guy who cared about fortunes and such. Never cared much. Oh, look at me now. I never knew the technique of kissing. I never knew the thrill I could get from your...
Maddie, my slippery little producer, has brought us back without me even noticing. Look at that, you sneak. Anyway, we're back here, taking me and my guest by surprise. So you heard all sorts of interesting conversation on the sideline, but none of it will endanger Dan Kelly's political career or have Winona fired from her job. So step right up to the mic there. Get right in front of that. I'm delighted to have Winona Howder with Food and Water Watch in the studio with us.
I'm so glad to be here.
You're here on a book tour.
I am.
Yeah.
Thrilled to be in Des Moines.
Yeah, and if you'd been here during the legislative session, this guy right here probably could have given you a tour of the Capitol and introduced you to some other folks. Dan's been working on food policy from an Iowa point of view. The Iowa Food Bank funding has been, well, it was vetoed last year. So this year, trying to make sure that doesn't happen. But I mean, we've talked about that a lot on the show. Before we get into Winona's book, which is, I think, very important work on the broader umbrella question of farm and food policy.
Sure. And Winona, anytime you want to tour the Capitol, you just
okay. That's right. You don't have to be there during session.
We can still do that today.
Yeah. So the drama in Congress right now on the Farm Bill, particularly on the food stamp or the SNAP program. What's your take on that?
It's hard to believe that they're looking at doing that. We have hungry people in the state of Iowa. We have hungry people in the country. What we're trying to get in Iowa here is an appropriation for the emergency food banks. Now, this is an emergency situation. These are people that have fallen on tough times very recently and need help getting back on their feet. That's very different than part of the discussion happening in Washington, where the SNAP program's being called, just a way of life rather than a help up. Well, Frank called just a little bit ago there, Ed, and I wanted to make a comment on Frank's phone call. When we're talking about putting people in a position where they can get out of these situations, as Frank suggests, that's a perfect argument for better education funding. I mean, we've got to put people in a position where they can take care of themselves, and it's not a matter of just cutting a program. It's a matter of giving people an opportunity, helping people to get the education and the opportunities necessary, so that they're not dependent. Right, so that they're not dependent on these programs. It's not there is no silver bullet to any of these questions. It's about taking a look at how we can put our country in a better position by helping people who have hit hard times and are struggling to pull out of it. That's what this is about.
Yeah. Well, I agree, and it's fascinating, really, the timing of this program today, because as we speak, the U.S. House is rolling through the final amendments on the Farm Bill, and could be close to making a decision on what to approve, I'm not even sure where the food stamp amendment is in the process right now. But
we need to keep a close eye on that.
The truth is, if the Republicans get their way and they cut food stamps by a big chunk, or even what the Senate is proposing as a compromise, that's going to affect the situation here in Iowa, and it's going to affect the food banks, and maybe it'll actually help. Maybe if Governor Branson is paying attention, he'll say, "Oh, less support from Washington. Maybe we do need to do that food stamp or that food bank."
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out with both discussions happening at the same time. You may be right, Ed. This may help get us the appropriation, but
politics is funny.
That's the point. Is not win one, lose another battle. The point is to help those who are suffering from hunger issues in the state of Iowa, particularly children. When we have so many children in Iowa, their parents don't know where their next meal is coming from. We have so many children dependent upon free and reduced lunches at the public schools and so forth. It's an embarrassment that we live in the breadbasket of the country. We feed the world from right here in Iowa. And we have hungry people. Why can't we fix this? These are efforts to fix it.
It's a matter of political will. It really is. Well, and I'm real excited to have Winona in the studio with us, because she's written a book that I haven't read the book yet, but for what I hear, political will is one of the issues that play into the book you've written, Foodopoly. I love that name, Foodopoly, The Battle Over the Future of Food and Farming in America. And you're in Iowa talking about this book. Thank you for coming.
I am so pleased to be here. And I think it's ironic that the Farm Bill is being voted on today. My book talks about farm policy going back to the 1930s. And part of the story really is what happened in the 1980s, when the deregulation of the laws that prevented companies from becoming too big, the laws that enforced competition, because we have an economic system that's built on competition. Yet all of our public policy now is directed at letting companies get very, very large. And this is the kind of deregulation that led to the trade agreements that offshored jobs and really eventually led to this economic situation that we have today, where 50% of Americans make $34,000 or less, and we're losing the middle class.
And it's led to the monopoly that we see in agriculture. I mean, there are 4 companies that now control the vast majority, over 75% of all the pork production, and you have this vertical integration, which even Senator Grassley has criticized, where you have corporations raising the hogs and processing the hogs. We had reasons why that was not allowed. It's not healthy. Now it's happening, and it's happening more and more. I mean, there are more and more ways in which agriculture is consolidating.
That's
and
right.
I assume that seems to be where your book is going.
Well, my book talks about how we have 20 food processing companies today that are responsible for manufacturing more than 60% of the brands in the grocery store. So a consumer goes into the grocery store, it looks like there's a lot of choice, diversity, but really there's a small cabal of companies that control those brands. They figured out how to use sugar, salt, and fat to addict people to foods that aren't good for them. But even those companies aren't as powerful in the food industry as the grocery stores, with Walmart really being at the top. We have 4 grocery chains that control, in many parts of the country, 70 to 90% of the market.
And what are they besides Walmart?
The Kroger brands, Costco, and Target.
Target is now a grocery store?
Yeah, it's
See,
one of the fourth largest.
I go to Gateway Market and Cafe. We have this local grocery store that I love. There's several great local grocery stores in Des Moines. It's tougher and tougher for them to make it as the big chains end up monopolizing more and more of the market.
That's exactly right. And, I think this is part of this discussion that you've been having about the SNAP program, because these companies have gotten so large, and the deregulation that's taken place has made it more and more difficult for people to have jobs and to have the income that they need to actually purchase healthy food. And the very legislators that are today going to vote, they've already voted on the amendment to cut $30 million out of the SNAP program in the House. That failed. Okay. But in the House bill, it will be $20 million that's cut. And in the Senate bill, $4 million, and they'll come to some kind of compromise.
Million or billion?
Billion, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm getting my M's and my B's
it's hard after
mixed
a while.
up.
Soon we'll be talking
morning.
trillions and zillions.
That's right. But these are the legislators, the ones that are making these really horrible statements on the House floor as we sit here, that also are voting for the policies that are allowing the wealthiest 1% to get richer while the rest of the population gets poorer.
Yeah, so it's really it's the same cabal, if I may, that are opposed to any kind of food assistance for the poor, that are also supporting the policies that make it harder for people, not just the poor, to find high quality, affordable food. And that allows small businesses to have a place in the food distribution process. I mean, look at how many fewer grocery stores we have nowadays because of the consolidation.
Well, that's right. And it's this decades of bad farm policy that have hurt states like Iowa so much and have left really large swaths of our country, rural communities that were dependent on farming. It's left them impoverished because agriculture, of course, is the engine of economic growth in rural areas. And these farm policies have made it possible for the very largest companies to benefit and have cheap commodities, and the grocery industry to have access to these cheap brands and to make a pile of money while rural communities are suffering.
Dan, feel free to jump in here.
I just can't imagine that cutting the SNAP program back is going to be good for rural communities in any way, shape, or form. Does absolutely nothing to help people move into the middle class. That's what we got to start talking about. Helping people move into the middle class, not just this idea that all these programs are out there to keep people content with being poor. That's not the point. The point is that people hit hard times. It can happen to anyone, anyone at all can suffer. And one of the absolute worst sufferings that anyone can go through is hunger, especially for a child. And I just cannot believe that anyone is discussing this. Again, I'm glad that in the state of Iowa, we're starting to talk about a public-private partnership for our food banks, because 38 other states enjoy that. It's time for Iowa to move forward.
Yeah, and what you're describing, Dan, has happened to me twice in my life.
Right.
When I first moved to Iowa, my back was so bad. I was in Europe when I heard it, and I was not able to get home. I tried to stow away on boats on the docks of London among the seedy longshoremen there. It was a fascinating place to be, scary.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite get on a boat, but I did get back eventually. But I had no wherewithal to work. I had no resources. I had a young family just starting up, and we went on food stamps. We were there were four of us living on like 12, 13 grand a year.
Yeah.
And we went on food stamps. No apologies. You know, it was a safety net that helped us get through a very, very difficult time. We weren't on it for more than a year or two, maybe, and then things got better. You know, and the second time was in my adult life when I got wrapped up with this, tainted with the brush of those who the two folks who embezzled money from Aviva. That's a long story for another conversation, but I didn't go on food stamps, but I could have.
I mean, it can happen to anyone
at any age,
and
in any circumstance.
To get back to my education point that I like to bring up just once again, I think we need to take a look at every one of these congressmen and congresswomen who vote to cut the SNAP program, and ask them what they're doing to help with education funding. How are they helping people move into the middle class? If this is all about people just living on the federal dime or the state dime or whatever, let's really do what we've got to do to help people move into a better lifestyle, into a life where they can be self-sufficient, where they can have a good job and be productive. And there are lots of people that are living in poverty and living in tough economic means that work very, very hard every day, and it's really insulting to those people to send this message that they're just willing to take and take and take and not give. And that, I think it's a very dangerous discussion. We talk about it in terms of the SNAP program. That's a good political folder to put it in, but really this is just very, very language that is wrong to use in discussing people that are struggling. That's not what our country is about. It's not what my politics are about. That's not what yours is about. It's not.
It's nice to hear that kind of nice to hear that kind of talk coming from a politician. I hope we hear that from candidates running for governor next year, for U.S. Senate, and for the legislature and U.S. Congress as well. Right. That's good stuff, Dan.
Well,
thank you.
That is honestly how I feel. Moving people into the middle class, that's what we've got to be about in this country.
Well, I want to, when we come back, Dan's got to take off, folks. Winona's going to stay with us. I'm excited to hear more about the work of Food and Water Watch. I want to hear more about the reception she's getting on this book and how the whole conversation we're having this week about food stamps ties in with the bigger picture of food security. I do want to thank Tally's Restaurant, speaking of food, Tally's Restaurant Bar and Catering for sponsoring this segment of our show. Check out Tally's in Beaverdale, folks. A great restaurant, open for lunch and supper, and also a fantastic Sunday brunch. Also, Fighting Burrito, another one of our business supporters with restaurants here in Des Moines and in Ames. Also, Ritual Cafe. Ritual Cafe is at 13th and Locust in downtown Des Moines. Not just coffee, tea, smoothies, and great paninis, but music on Friday and Saturday nights, sometimes other nights as well. Thank you to Story County Veterinary Clinic and my friend Kim Holding for helping to sponsor this show. Also, Sergeant's Garage. And Dan, I appreciate your work as a real estate agent in Newton.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I'd like to encourage folks to, if they're looking at buying or selling in Newton, to give you a shout.
Just got a new listing yesterday.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Probably somebody who heard the show, right?
Yeah, well, actually, it might have been. I'll have to ask. I'll have to ask.
Hey, when we come back, folks, Winona Howder continuing the conversation with us. If you want to join the conversation, you're welcome to do so at 244-0077, 244-0077. We'll be back in just a minute.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Thank you, Mary McAdams, for bringing us back to our conversation here today on the Fallon Forum. I want to thank the $1 Million Marathon. This is a cool thing happening in Winona. This is a relay run across the country, 160 marathons, starting in Washington State, across the 4,000 miles altogether, ending up through Washington, D.C., onto the coast, organized from right here in Des Moines, 160 marathons back-to-back to raise money for cancer research. It's the $1 Million Marathon sponsored by Above and Beyond Cancer. I want to thank Max Wellman for his music contributions to this program and also the Immigrant Entrepreneur Summit. And I want to welcome Winona Howder back to the program. She is the director of Food and Water Watch and also an author. Her most recent book is on food policy, and it ties in very well with what's going on in Congress right this minute, debate on the food bill.
That's exactly right. What I do in Foodopoly is go back in time and trace how we've ended up with such a dysfunctional food system that is not allowing farmers to make a living and with food that makes people sick.
How long did it start? I mean, how far back does this problem go?
Well, you know, we had some pretty good policies in the 1930s during the Roosevelt administration that did things like limit the production of commodities so that there would be a fair price for consumers and farmers.
So you wouldn't glut the market.
Right. We don't want to glut the market. It established a grain reserve.
That was Henry Wallace.
Right.
Our
China.
dude. Yeah.
China has had a grain reserve since 1854.
Yeah, and a grain reserve is highly recommended in the Old Testament too.
That's exactly
Frank's
right.
no longer listening to appreciate that biblical reference, but hey, yeah, 7 years, that's what kept Egypt from starving while Joseph's family was doing really poorly up north.
And a number of policies were established during that period that made it possible for farmers to make a living. But, after World War II, a group of business leaders and politicians got together, and they decided that there were too many farmers. There were 6.8 million farms during that period.
They really thought there were too many farmers?
Yes, they really thought there were too many farmers. I've traced back the documents. They believed that there was a need for cheap labor in the North to become an increasingly large industrial power.
There weren't too many farmers because having too many farmers is bad socially or philosophically. It was a problem because they needed the cheap labor for the growing number of factories expanding as the industrial age moved forward. Okay.
But they also had kind of an attitude about agriculture. They thought that capital could replace labor and that chemical-intensive agriculture was more efficient. And they believed that the country needed to move towards vertical integration or having a few companies control the whole chain of...
Now, did some of these people really believe that was a good idea, or did they just know this was a way to get filthy rich?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. But
How
when
can
you
it be
trace...
both? How can you...
Some of these men got together and formed an organization called the Committee for Economic Development.
Right.
And they actually, during the Eisenhower administration, began to make a lot of progress with these ideas. And they were also tied into the financial services industry, and they really thought the future was money and technology and industry, not food production.
But it doesn't sound like there's a drop of altruism in that recipe.
No, there was no altruism. No, I don't even suggest that.
Right.
But by the 1970s, under Earl Butz, I think
get
many
bigger,
people,
get out, Earl Butz.
Right.
Yeah.
And as Secretary of Agriculture under Richard Nixon, he had quite a bit of power, and he cut what's known as parity, or the ability of farmers to make a living. He cut that by 50%.
So it's been kind of an incremental shift in policy away from some restrictions on production in order to maintain prices, some price supports, to a system that has really enriched the upper crust of agriculture and the corporate interests that have come to dominate production.
Right. But there are two other really important things that happened. The first I alluded to earlier in the show. That's when Ronald Reagan was elected and on an agenda of deregulation. And he placed in our agencies that oversee competition, he placed appointees who eviscerated our antitrust laws. And that made it possible for food companies, every industry, to really consolidate and become much larger. And when a company gets bigger, they have more money, more political power. They were able to rewrite trade policy under the Clinton administration.
Now, we're still heading that direction.
Absolutely.
More and more consolidation, fewer and fewer bigger and bigger players. Yet at the same time, there is a powerful local foods movement that continues to increase exponentially every year. You see it at farmers markets. You see it through community-supported agriculture. You see it through stores like Gateway Market, Campbell's, New City Market. I mean, people are concerned about where their food comes from. You see it through the movement to label genetically modified foods. So, I mean, I don't know where that tension plays out. Right now, the power brokers are still those who support continued consolidation, monopolies, foodopoly, as you call it. But do you see is there enough growing power on the other side, on our side, to maybe challenge the hegemony that sector continues to amass?
No. I think what it does.
Are we hosed?
I think that this food movement has the potential to really grow the political activism that's necessary. And one of the reasons that I wrote Foodopoly is, as thrilled as we all are with the good food movement, and I own an organic farm, so I'm someone who really supports this movement. But with $4.8 billion in sales of local food, but $2.3 trillion of corporate food, we're going to have to do more than vote with our fork. We're going to have to vote with our votes, and we're going to have to hold the people we elect accountable. Today, half of our food comes from overseas, countries like China. A large percentage of organic food is coming from China.
Whole Foods. A lot of the organic stuff that Whole Foods sells comes from China.
Right. So I wrote this book not to be a bummer, but because I think
it's a call.
It's a call to action, really, that we need people to get really involved politically. And I think that this whole discussion that you've been having this morning about poverty, the need for food stamps, is tied into this, because these are the policies, these trade policies, these economic policies that have left people impoverished. They're not, and Congress is blaming the victims, not themselves, for the policies that they are responsible for.
And of course, the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture plays a key role in farm and food policy, and I think we both are very impressed historically with what Henry Wallace was able to do during the Depression years, and we're pretty solidly critical of Earl Butz under the Nixon years. How do you feel about Tom Vilsack's job as Secretary of Ag?
I don't think he's done a very good job. One of the things
you can say that's okay.
One of the things that the Obama administration promised to do was to begin to deal with this issue that farmers don't have a fair market. Farmers have no way to get a fair price for the animals they raise, even the commodities they raise. And so Secretary Vilsack did, along with the Department of Justice, start this process to look at these issues about unfair markets.
What was that called again?
Well, it's around the Grain Inspection Agency, and it was nicknamed the GIPSA hearing.
Okay, sure, yep.
But it was really to look at policies that needed to change to make a fair market. The meat industry started running some ads and put some pressure on Secretary Vilsack, and he and President Obama chickened out and didn't carry through on what President Obama had promised right here in Iowa about creating a fair marketplace for farmers. So I think
they chickened out because of the pressure from corporate interests.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So what about the White House garden? I mean, I thought that was a great idea. Turn part of the old South Lawn into a garden to demonstrate concern about the importance of local food, about growing your own. I mean, has there been any kind of more broad policy spin-off from that symbolic message?
I think it's great symbolism, but the Obama administration has been working to actually deflate some of the policies that would be good for local food.
Such as?
Well, right now they are the supporter of a trade agreement called the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Sure, yeah.
Obama is one of the largest supporters of this. It's to replace the largely ineffective World Trade Organization. To begin with, 12 countries in Asia would become a party to it. Mm-hmm. One of the provisions would affect local procurement, or actually being able to talk about local foods, promote local foods. And there are a lot of other provisions.
You wouldn't be able to do that? Or?
Right. It would be
really?
It would be something that it could lead to these investor lawsuits, because this is a very dangerous trade policy. It lets companies sue governments for actually doing things to help their citizens or promote policies that help their citizens.
So you know a bit about food, both from your writing, from your work with Food and Water Watch, probably from a lot of other aspects of your life. Next year, here in Iowa, also organized from here in Iowa, the Great March for Climate Action is going to be calling attention to the climate crisis, challenging America and our policy leaders to do more to fight this problem. And we are talking about how we feed 1,000 people marching across America, a mobile city. Every day you move the city 15 miles, but still every day you got to feed those marchers. And, we're looking at how to do that, how to do it sustainably, responsibly, how to buy food from actual farmers along the route. Yeah, sure, in the desert, that might be a challenge. But any thoughts or words of wisdom to share on how we accomplish such a mammoth undertaking in terms of the food side of it all?
Well, I, in writing Foodopoly, saw writings from places like Montana that used to be self-sufficient in food.
Right.
So, I think we have a long history of actually being able to produce food. And I don't know what month the marchers are coming through Iowa, but it was
July. Well, it'll be nice time to come to Iowa.
It would seem to me that you have one of the easy months
right.
to feed people.
I'm thinking April in Arizona might be more challenging.
But there's no reason that here in the Midwest farmers can't grow greens, and it's kind of silly that today the policies we have actually lead to two counties in California produce almost all the greens for the country. Yeah. So I think there's probably going to be a way that you can work with local farmers and.
But it's an important part of the climate conversation too, because the more you can localize your production of food, energy, fiber, the smaller your carbon footprint, and the more resilient you are when the big stuff really does hit the fan.
That's right. And we're beginning to see the climate chaos. And I think it's why it's so important that we really need to change these policies that are preventing us from having a more regional and local food system. And as long as we have this grocery industry that's so large, that demands so much volume, it puts so much pressure on both the people who are trying to compete with it from the independent industry and on the farmers. So we're going to need to change some of these things. And, of course, it's the banks at the top of the system that are benefiting the most, the banks and the financial services industry.
Well, Winona, thank you so much for joining us. Folks, Winona Howder with Food and Water Watch, author of Foodopoly. And I can't remember the entire rest of the title.
Battle Over Food and Farming.
The Battle Over Food and Farming. Thank you so much. And again, that book, I presume that book might be available here in Des Moines at Beaverdale Books.
That's right,
and
Beaverdale
possibly
Books.
Also at the bookstore.
Yes, at the bookstore. Beaverdale still has a few books and can order them.
We have another bookstore in Des Moines called The Bookstore, right here in right under the Skywalk where this show is broadcast.
Thanks so much. For
thank you.
Having me on the show.
All right, hey, I want to thank my producer, Maddie Arrington. I want to thank Webcast One Live for providing the studio for this production. I want to thank all those that took the time to call in today. I want to thank Van Morrison. Let's see, and all the businesses that make the show possible, like Community CPA and Associates, now the 10th largest tax and accounting firm in the state. Again, Gateway Market, my anchor business sponsor. Please support Gateway Market. Hawk Restaurant, where I had lunch yesterday with Matt Denner. Great place. Again, go to the Fallon Forum website, fallonforum.com, for the complete list of businesses, organizations, and events that help make this show possible. You, of course, can also help make this show possible by donating online at fallonforum.com. Again, I'll be back tomorrow. We got plenty more to talk about this week, and who knows what else might happen since the U.S. Congress continues to deliberate, and that, on many occasions, can be a scary proposition.
You have grown. Cast my memory back there, Lord. Sometimes I'm overcome thinking about laughing and running, hey, behind the stadium with you. My brown-eyed girl.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.